Welcome back to Agency Allies, where we uncover stories behind today's most compelling creative firms. I'm your host, Adam Testa. Today, I'm joined by Sean Ashlow, the brand whisperer and owner behind Anchovies Agencies, a bold Denver-based brand agency known for crafting sensory, future-focused brands. Anchovies covers everything from naming, brand strategy, and identity to web design, and I'm sure some other things that Sean can fill me in. Sean, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You started Anchovies in 2009. I'd love to hear kind of like why you decided to start your own agency and what you envisioned the difference that would be Anchovies. How did you want to do things differently?
So I essentially was working as a screen printer at the time, and that kind of manifested before I owned the agency. And I had started a clothing company kind of through that medium, and that led me to start building websites. And then I got laid off at the screen printer, which was actually in Boulder.
Oh, really?
And was,
What was
yeah, I don't
the
know if they,
screen printer?
maybe it was like AVO or something like
It's in
that.
North
I
Boulder?
can't. Yeah, gosh, I mean, it was like 16 years ago. So it was like, but yeah. And, at that kind of point in time, I really didn't know what to do, but I was building websites on the side and, decided, okay, well, maybe I can make some money off of this. And I gotta say, it was like a really long, hard road because I remember my first website was around $300 and I was actually super stoked about that. And I think this is actually something that really helped me later on in my career, but I just started emailing people and if we're just being real, I would email restaurants and things and be like, "Yeah, I went in to, your restaurant," and then I'd be looking at their menu and I had XYZ and it was really great, but I noticed your website isn't mobile. So there's definitely
I like that.
a little
I respect the shit out of that. I love that type of stuff.
it was a hustle, you know?
I had this business that was selling like vape liquid, and
Mm.
I would call the shop and I'd be like, "Hey, do you guys have Eris vapors?" And they'd be like, "No." And I'll be like, "Oh, that's a bummer." And then I hang up and I would call tomorrow. I'll be like, "Hey, do you guys have Eris vapors?" And then I would call next week and be like, "Hey, I've heard a lot of customers are asking about my product." Put different voices and stuff.
I mean, I mean, I think that like, especially when you're younger, there if you have that mentality to kind of, just find a way, when you're younger, I think that that line between, what maybe is appropriate or not is a little blurrier. But there's something about that that I think, makes a designer even better when they have that kind of little bit of edge to them of like, I'll just find a way. So anyway, so I, at that time kind of just, manifested it. We were probably primarily in web design. And to be honest with you, we weren't even always anchovies. At one point in time, we were Wonder Crate and we started really getting into the naming sphere, which is really something I quite enjoy. And I don't feel like a lot of other creative agencies, whether it be in Colorado or beyond, have kind of a balance of both identity and naming. So we've really found a good niche in there. But yeah, people
Certainly
were trying to
don't.
hire me.
I
Yeah,
never
go for
hear
it. Yeah.
like emphasis on naming. Like naming is something agencies do, but they don't really like. Like, are you familiar with
Mhm.
the Igor naming guide?
No.
That's the that's the thing that taught me how to name. Like before, I thought you just take some mushrooms and you end up on a rooftop and you kind of have the spirit quest to figure out your company name. But the Igor naming guide is all about like I don't know how you guys name things, but actually, I'd love to hear more about how you name things instead of me.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm just checking them out right now. I'll definitely go through that. So my like inspiration was an agency called 100 Monkeys. They're incredibly
Sounds familiar.
impressive. And Eli is the gentleman that runs that, who I believe actually took this agency over from his father many, many, many years ago. He has two items, if anyone is into naming, that I would highly suggest. One is just a book on naming that is incredible and it's very short. The other is actually like a deck of cards kind of game that kind of helps you go through the process of identifying a name. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of agencies kind of play in the naming route, but when you're doing it at a high level, certainly, I don't know. Naming is just a really interesting process. I think one of the other things that I see is it's not a service that always looks like it's in demand because naming feels so accessible. Like I know words, you know words. Like why would I hire anyone for that? But certainly a lot of clients coming to us are coming to us for like trademark issues that they got into, or they come
Mm.
to us and then we identify like some issues with the name. And we found kind of that conceptually everything, a lot of brands can be so much better when there's a better understanding of the name and it's not just moody. It's not just a vibe. Although, a lot of industries like hospitality and restaurants, bars, that stuff, I mean, they pretty much can just do whatever they want. The more abstract or weird, the better. But for most companies, that doesn't always work so well.
Do you think that like CPG can do whatever they want, or what do you think? What do you mean?
So here's just my rough rundown on what I think makes a good name. And then I'll give you a consumer product that we named recently that I think articulates this well. So for me, the best names, I mean, yeah, I don't think like there's like I think one of the harder things about names too is like this is just like guidelines to it. But what I'm usually asking myself is like from a business standpoint, like what is that name doing for us, in terms of like the associations it builds, beyond just is it available and do we like it sort of mentality. So the first thing for me is it pushing certain associations like of maybe whatever your value proposition is. So for example, we worked with a company that is doing smart locks, and one association to security is moats, like medieval moats. So that was an interesting kind of name for us. The other thing to me is the name unexpected. That's one of the bigger issues I see as anything in the creative like realm is like just being too on the nose. So we thought this was interesting because it's coming from a place of medieval that is quite a bit of distance to technology and a great differentiation because most tech companies are leaning into like futurism more. So is it helping aid in appropriate associations? Is it also unexpected? Those are big ones for us. There are probably a bunch of other smaller kind of things. Is it short? Does it have domain availability? All of those things. But similar to anchovies, for us, we wanted to kind of differentiate ourselves in a way where we were wanting to kind of create associations of unique tastes. And for
Yeah, I
an
mean, dude,
agency,
hit the nose on that for sure. Do you like anchovies?
I actually don't really, which is
Yeah,
okay. I'm so happy you
dude,
brought
that's
this up
fair.
because I mean, I had him like not too long ago, and it's like more of a charming experience now, like than it is like a fulfilling one. But I'm glad you brought this up because this is one of the biggest things I see in agency life is this difference, and this was coming from we kind of spoke about this at one point, like talking about ego, but like, do I have to like it for it to work? And, for me, the best visionaries and founders we work with really understand like it's great if I like it, but I care more about what it can do for the business. And that was same true with the anchovies, like unique taste. This is unexpected for an agency to maybe have a name that's not so sleek and beautiful, but we always are creating tension. So because we have a very contemporary identity, it's good tension between that.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
I love how you use that word tension. Right on.
Yeah, tension is, and that's the same thing with Moat, right? Okay, medieval, but it's a tech company,
Yeah.
right? It's just that like tension between something unexpected, and that seems to be really effective in creating something people are more curious about.
Yeah. That's really, yeah, that's interesting. I like that. And then, I mean, you kind of like, they say that in economic recessions, tin fish sales go up because it's kind of like a little like treat, like a little, but, and they're like nice tin fish. They're like even extremely well branded. They're like beautiful. And it's no longer like, I forgot the brands, but it's no longer just chunks of tuna in water. It's like olive oil with, like Patagonia does really good tinned fish. So just so we're on the same page,
Yeah.
Anchovies does naming, brand strategy, brand identity, websites. What is that kind of the full menu or
Yeah. I mean, I think when clients ask us this, I mean, typically if it's creative, we do it. If it's technical, it's probably likely we don't, if we're getting into like analytics or like setting up ads, that's, things that I'm less talented or interested in. But yeah, those are our bread and butter. We actually kind of were a little bit lower on web design recently. I kind of fell out of love with it. And then Framer came around, which is kind of a Webflow competitor. And I was like, oh man, I love web design again.
okay, yeah.
We're doing much more of that. Yeah, the most ideal projects for me are ones in which like we get control over a little bit of the name or a little bit of input with that, along with brand identity. Websites are super fun. I don't know, about yourself, but they are typically the most like revision heavy and like technical problematic pieces to a
Oh, yeah.
project.
I mean, depending on the size of the website, if it's like a big website, for sure,
Right. Right.
like exhausting, I think.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
way that
definitely.
the way that you speak about because and I kind of like I'm filling out the Sean vision, like in the anchovy. The way that you
Yeah.
speak about like kind of the creative stuff reminds me of Rick Rubin a little bit. You know that
Mm.
guy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, like, it's a nice compliment to hear that because I respect him. He's such a well, it was funny because he recently came out in an interview. I think it was like a CNN interview with what
Went
was his
on
name?
CNN.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
it
that's cool,
was.
but it's funny.
Yeah, it was kind of like more. Well, maybe it was 60 Minutes. I can't really remember. It was Anderson Cooper interviewing him, and I found it interesting because he was basically talking about having not a lot of technical expertise, and that people. And he was like, "Well, why do people hire you?"
Because
And
I believe
there,
in what I do and I believe and it just got memeified.
yeah, I mean, well, it got memeified because he was basically like, "I can't play instruments, and people hire me for my taste." And I think that kind of struck people as pretty interesting. And for me though, it was like it felt so relatable to kind of how we had constructed both our name and our agency and a lot of our own belief systems. Funny enough, like most of the time you are hiring an agency for how well defined like their taste is, which is both kind of an ability to kind of see that through time over time and how pendulums swing and having like as Rick Rubin would say, having your antenna up, but it's also the ability to kind of like see, how taste can help your like business, which is kind of more abstract in some ways. So yeah, I mean, Rick Rubin is an incredible creative and very unorthodox in some ways. That probably turns a lot of like, you know, artists, off because like, oh, he can't play like, an instrument. Like I don't respect that, but that's kind of even more reason to be curious about him.
Well, I think creativity and just like in a philosophical sense is all about being like authentic and nobody's more I mean, there's plenty of people, but like nobody's more authentic than like Rick Rubin. Like he's basically not using his phone. He's like his house is like this cool, like eclectic, like minimalism. Like I don't know. I think artists just see him and be like, that's a guy living his truth, and like maybe he can bring out the truth in me.
I love that. And I also will say, as a creative, like I've gotten a lot better understanding the tension within my own personality is like of great value. And the more that I lean into that, like I don't know about yourself, I'd be interested to kind of hear your journey. But I think as creatives, we think we have to kind of like, okay, this is what, designers or, brand strategists look like. They wear a certain thing, they talk a certain way, which to me, I've always come across as like, I don't know. I can appreciate the cerebralism of a lot of creatives, but it can come across like going to a lot of like websites where the copy is written in such a way where it's just so intellectual.
It's exclusive.
And it's like, and that's fine. If that is their truth too. But I feel like for me, I kind of like really dug into that. There are a lot of things about me that probably make me slightly unorthodox to what I think a perception of what a creative director is supposed to act like or say or whatever. And the more I've like just been more of myself and let that tension just kind of be okay, like I've felt people get me more and are more attracted to me in a way where I also just feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, marketing certainly is like just this blend of like I mean, even like just branding in general, you have like this tension, this great like stretch of like it's it's creativity, but it's also business. And those two are
Mhm.
kind of at odds with each other. And somehow
Mm.
we have to like bridge the gap between art and business into the branding. And we have to like be true to ourselves creating it, but we also have to keep the audience in mind. And it's just such a I've always not struggled with it, but I've always appreciated and emphasized that dichotomy.
I'm glad you brought this up because it's like really relevant to my week. I was doing a workshop with a creative who is essentially doing her own branding, but wanted kind of some outside consultation to navigate that. And one of the things that came up that she was truly very emotional about, which we actually cried during the workshop, of this like kind of contrast between how a business works and then like her own sort of passion and integrity and how those kind of like work together. And that was really like a struggle. And, I was very sensitive to it in a way that I think was helpful to her and where her journey was at. But outside of that conversation, I would say that for me, I've always viewed like our work as more less art and more of a hammer to get a job done. And that hasn't like deterred me. That doesn't like necessarily turn me off. I have my own side things outside of the agency that fulfill me in that way. But I think for me, like being you gain through my journey, I've gained a certain maturity to kind of realize like this in the same way that I get turned off when clients view these things as their own personal art project and that they can't go beyond what they like and understand how these things affect the business. I try to meet them there in that same regard, and so, and for example, which I've actually kind of become very passionate about. I think as designers, we're always like, let me just get like the Nikes, like the A24s, like those are my dream jobs, packaging and all of that stuff. Well, we definitely do a lot of like that. And not those brands, but the fun kind of, briefs. But
The
I love
brief that
working with
let you.
lawyers.
Oh, really? Well, I've done some design work, and I love when clients are like, "Adam, I trust you. I see your
Yeah.
portfolio. Just do whatever you wanna do," and, like, that's the best for me. What is the best for you, you think?
Certainly the same. I mean, I agree with you, but I do think like, I came from this place, where I was like, love Paul Rand and the Steve Jobs, like, lore about when they worked together for the next logo. And he basically was like, I'm not going to do revisions. I'm going to give you something to solve your problem and you're going to take it or leave it, but you're going to pay me. Sort of mentality,
Yeah,
which is kind of funny because I do feel that poisons the well for younger designers that have not gotten to the point in which they have earned that.
totally.
Meaning,
Yeah,
I mean, I was there a little earlier, and you know what? Like, this is the biggest thing for junior designers. If so much we see in like meme culture and everything is like joking about client revisions. Sometimes you're getting more revisions because you're not that great yet. And that was a really humbling kind of epiphany for me. Is like, we just sit back and always think the client's wrong, but there are often times where like we are not talented enough. And having a little bit of humility in that process, I think is really advantageous to like that, kind of growth. But yeah, to answer your question basically is like for me, yeah, I want that trust. But I also understand that the client is on their own journey and kind of in a very Rick Rubin sort of attitude. I need them to kind of go the wrong way only to kind of see the light later. So I don't mind sometimes them making some poor decisions because that is like the human kind of like journey. But also too, what we're also talking about is sometimes there are things that I will do that don't align with my taste or exactly how I would do something if I believe and maybe even is less fun or whatever it is. If I believe that is going to aid the business in being more successful. And as long as you kind of understand those two things, that it's not a personal kind of like thing where I'm always just operating within what I like and what I want to do. And I'm more aligned with what I can do to help a business succeed. It's a better framework versus like how you may approach like self-initiated art, music, kind of things like that, where it is more self-fulfilling.
yeah, and it's funny, it's the humility part is so real.
Mm.
Sometimes you're not good enough, and then sometimes you don't know how to talk to the client. Like, maybe you spent so much time in Illustrator just, like, messing with, like, different color hues that you're totally just off balance. You're totally out of touch with, like, what the client actually wanted, and I see that all the time with just entrepreneurs in general, where they focus too much about, like, what they want, and what they really need to listen to is like, what they really need to do is just validate it. Like, are you sure people want a dog leash that, like, is rainbow and kind of has spikes on it? And, like, are you sure that won't hurt the dog? Like, can you validate that? So I would consider myself like a creative, but I also have my MBA, and like that's attention right there. And have you seen that brief? I think it was the Pepsi logo.
Mm.
It was like a famous brief that just was like 100 pages long, and it was
Brand standards, I think you're referring to.
yeah, and it was just like so crazy. But then you realize like, oh yeah, this logo is probably worth like $1 million. Well, I don't know but yeah, it comes down to skill, but also skill in selling. Speaking of
Absolutely.
selling, like what type of I saw that you had a university college. That's where I got my MBA and my undergrad.
Oh
The
yeah, see you. Yeah.
CU,
Hmm.
you have CU as a client. I tried to do some research into like what industries you guys are in, but you're in like all of them. Like what? Maybe I'm wrong. What industries do you normally guys kind of go for?
Yeah, we are all over the place, which I will say, like in some sort of client engagements, they're like, have you worked in this industry before? Like, that's what we're really looking for. And usually my response to that is like, what comes with a lot of repetition comes complacency. So I think working in so many different spaces while we do have, some consistency in there, it does keep things fresh, not only for us, but I think our ideas seem to be kind of more unique when have to do something so many times over. However, with that said, yeah, I love to work with lawyers, which I know sounds really not sexy, but that was kind of this is, for other designers too, because everyone is trying to work with those sexy brands. There was this moment in time where I'm like, well, this industry can be sexy. Let's just make it like, let's think about it like a consumer packaging like brand. How do we think about this in elevated terms? So, you know, a lot of some of our best work is taking kind of boring industries or boring companies and then like flipping that on its head. And that also allows us to have more of a voice in the design community because there's just less of that. Like restaurants, bars, hospitality is some of my most like, I love looking at case studies of those, but I mean, they're all so good. Like they're kind of a dime a dozen in terms of like, they're all fantastic and they highly value branding too. So they do put a lot of money into it. But yeah, I'm quite fascinated at working with industries or companies that are like, oh yeah, why would you do that? It's boring. Well, it doesn't have to be. And I think we've like proven that in like a lot of our projects. Most recently, some of the stuff we've shared on LinkedIn, but we do need to update our website more. It's a little bad right now.
Yeah,
Like we haven't.
I'd love to see some of the lawyer work. I had worked with a lawyer before, and um, again, there's like this tension of like wanting to appear different, but not wanting to. I think lawyers like to have as much people as possible that can hire them, and you don't want to like scare anybody off. I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's also like the associations too. Like we worked with a divorce lawyer and we basically personified their concept as like Nike in a suit. Nike kind of athletics, sports have all the right associations to being competitive and winning. And that was a great vessel for that.
Dude, I love that. That's cool.
Yeah. And we just
Yeah.
made them look like Nike, like straight up. Like the law firm is Burnham Law, which is also started in Boulder. Now they have quite a bit, but like you go to their website and the subconsciously, like I think people probably like can get a feeling you know, of athletics or sports or Nike underlining in there. And it's just because we're using their Nike Volt color and their typeface, which is
This
just
is
an
so
open source
dope.
typeface. So, and then like, it's interesting though. I mean, we do have other lawyers, like we have a personal injury, Garza, Garza.law. And that is so funny, man, because when we pitch this, it has this, it's a really avant-garde almost like law firm where it has this cool horse logo. He's a Texas-based personal injury lawyer. And I remember when we pitched it, he was like, this doesn't look like a law firm.
Mhm.
And to be straight up, he did not like it. He didn't like the colors. He didn't like the logo and all of these other things. And by the time he had just a moment to not only share it with other people, which I think usually scares designers, we actually like encourage that because I think it can actually be very beneficial. Now he's buying a red truck and like wants the horse on the back of it. But he's like, this looks like a fancy restaurant. And I'm like,
Yeah.
exactly. We're just
Yeah.
taking identities that live in other people's lives in these other different products and then speaking that same language in a place that's unexpected. And funny enough, we as consumers, we don't really object to that as much as I think people think. Like you just kind of accept a brand as it is, and the design communicates what it does without you saying, I don't want to work with them. They don't look like a lawyer.
What is Garza?
Yeah, Garza dot law is his website, which we did the brand identity for, but we also did the website. And it's like, does not look like a law firm, like by any means, you know?
So sick.
Yeah, cool logo, still presents strength. We also did these like hand painted illustrations that are like halfway down the middle page that were like kind of gave it this like premium feel. But he's been like super successful with the brand. And certainly when you're experiencing a brand, in this case, not packaging, but on a website, you kind of just click it on all those Google links, you come across something like this, and just intrinsically without reading much, you're just, I think, presented with, I'm curious, like, tell me more. Like, design's doing so much of the heavy lifting of just, hey, we're different, which I think sometimes
Vibe.
people forget, you know? Yeah, vibe. It's all just about vibes. Like, people, I'm so glad you brought vibes up. The death, like, I believe, of like, we need to tell a story. That never really spoke to me. I'm not saying that I don't believe in story driven narratives and how brands can do that, but we live in such short, like with TikToks and like 10, 5 seconds of things. Like vibes do way more effective heavy lifting than some story. We just don't have the time for that in most cases. So vibes can
Interesting.
happen in a couple seconds, basically.
Stories versus vibes. Maybe stories worked once, but now everybody has a story, but not everybody has a vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's not to say that this is not like something where like it's always like true. I don't think anything is like 100%. But man, short form content. I would even go as far as to say that I have a belief that web design will probably translate into just pretty much like longer one pages moving into the future. We've had some interesting case studies where we've had a lawyer that like kind of went from a like big SEO, like big, website, and then he just went to one page and his conversion like immediately changed. And I feel like it's often because people approach their website like a car manual and not a car commercial. And if you're trying to kind of grasp this and tell me more, and you're not giving them everything, you're making them more curious, it seems to be effective. So we may see like much smaller websites moving forward, which I think also like, why do you need that many pages? Here's what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and who we do it for. Get on a phone call. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
it could be that easy. Yeah.
it could be a lack of like attention span. I definitely see more websites with the like rise of these different AI tools to build websites. Everybody's going for the one pager. And I think people maybe just are getting used to it and they don't want to like click around. They don't want to like work for it. And I can appreciate that. Maybe, you know, we have to validate. We have to figure out what people want. So
Right.
yeah, you work with lawyers, you work with um cannabis companies. How are a lot of this podcast is kind of sharing how we get new business. Like a lot of
Mm.
agencies suffer from this kind of plague that's like, especially the marketing agencies, like they suffer where it's like, we're going to put all of our marketing time into our clients because that makes us money, but we're not going to market for ourselves because we're
Mm.
always going to put the client first. So it's kind of like this noble, fucked up uh, business issue, but I'd love and they get in like this trap of like referrals. How is Anchovies kind of dealing with that? How do you get new clients? How do you retain them? What's your strat?
Well, firstly, yeah, wow, that sounds so true to the agency experience of just like primarily working with referrals. And I think a lot of other agencies probably have come from this space of like haven't seen anything else work, really, and kind of been really let down by that. Certainly, referrals is the majority of our business. But I would say that some things that I have learned that I think are helpful is number one, to me, depending on the clientele, of course, we found tremendous success with LinkedIn. And it kind of brings me back to my roots of writing those restaurants because a lot of it is personal outreach. I'm not saying that you can't, create ads, and we can talk about that briefly, but there's something to be said as like,
You would create the dopest ad. Like I know it. I can like see it.
Well, thanks. Because we've like kind of considered like different approaches to that. And like I will say like it's here's another suggestion for like agencies that I personally found very difficult, like build rebranding as the Anchovies and going through the website. Like having, and maybe, in your collaborative approach to kind of bringing creatives together, it'd be very helpful for creatives to help kind of brand or advertise each other and not do it internally. In the same way that we suggest that clients don't do that themselves, I think still holds true for agencies because we can't see ourselves in the same way. I think, we had a billboard once early on in the agency, and I don't know if that was so effective. We have done kind of ads before. I think to me, what I found is, getting on LinkedIn, being very active on there. Now, in particular for us, this is very effective because a lot of lawyers are predominantly on there. Now,
True.
the other reason I like LinkedIn is because not only do you have everyone that you actually need to talk to on there, but in addition to that, and most importantly, the content's pretty bad on there, meaning you're in highly saturated
It's like a
quality on
circle jerk.
Instagram or TikTok. Say that again.
It's a circle jerk, dude. It's disgusting. Like I hate it so much.
Yeah, totally. Well, but at the same time, like, I don't know, like the content. So, like, to me, what we've been really curious about that we hope to kind of do soon is like taking kind of what works on TikTok and Instagram and bringing that over to LinkedIn where we don't see that kind of quality of level of like understanding how content works. Like, LinkedIn truly feels more MySpace than anything else, where it's like people's understanding of content is so bad that it also is giving the most opportunity for someone to come in there and do a really great job at
Which
it.
is kind of your whole shtick of like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it fits.
Yeah. I mean, think about it more broadly, right? Like, I mean, there are so many things creatively that we consume where you're taking that thing that wasn't cool and you're making it kind of cool. And that's just such low hanging fruit to identify these things that have a certain perception. And then that's where the tension or the twist comes in. So it's just a good guide, even if you're making music, right? I make like a little bit of music on the side and it's like, oh, what's kind of something unexpected and abstract? Or can I take that thing that is like kind of cool and then, cool to me, but not cool to everyone else, and then figure out why people's associations are a certain way and how I can maybe redirect that. So, LinkedIn has been great for us. I think we would like to move into more social media.
What exactly are you doing on LinkedIn? Like, do you have like content? Are you like messaging people? What's
I'm
the
just messaging. I'm just doing a lot of DMing. And you know
like
what? Like
manually or like
manually.
yeah?
And
What's the
and in some
success
cases,
rate?
pretty high if you have the time. It has well, what we're talking about is if we're looking at kind of the return on investment, your success rate. I don't know that maybe I'd say the percentage is probably like up to like 25%. But the message itself or the labor included in that is certainly higher, right? So, like, for example, and it depends on each situation. I'm kind of organically looking for opportunities here. It could be something as straightforward as me, which I've seen before. This is nothing necessarily revolutionary, but I may go to a lawyer and kind of do a slight audit on their brand or website. And that's like a little video. I got to make the video and send the message. But it's so
You mean like a
personalized.
you mean like a loom?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We did. Yep. Yep. I see this in like the SEO kind of space and things like that, but like just anything personalized is helpful. But here's like we get really abstract too. There was a lawyer where we kind of had a soft lead generally from this lawyer, and we knew enough about the law firm, what their revenue was, that this would be a pretty big job if we could close it. Well, and we haven't actually closed this yet. So it'll be interesting if this actually happens. But like through his LinkedIn, there was some content that he shared related to kind of vodka, and he kind of was a connoisseur of it. And so we actually sent a gift of vodka to his office and kind of had something along the lines of like, we'll do the logo, you can, drink like the vodka or something. In higher price point things,
What was the brand of vodka?
I don't know because our account manager sent it,
Oh,
but it was like,
like
decently
nice, yeah.
expensive. So it's like $135, I think, or something like that. We're willing to risk some of that, and the fact that like what I'm trying to connect here is highly personalized, has a better return rate. It's just typically more time consuming or expensive. And so they're directly correlated to one another. There's such a fallacy of like, oh, I'm just going to set this up. It's going to go into automation and then boom, boom, like we're going to get all of these leads. And I think some people have hacked that, but certainly the industry, again, those are those kind of things that I think we get down on ourselves. Like, why can't I figure it out? It's working for everyone else. Or like, they have a good sales flow. And I don't know. I just never really, understood that. So yeah, we do want to do more social media, I think, especially on LinkedIn, but most of it's like personal outreach and referrals. So we haven't quite cracked the code yet
Would
either, I suppose.
you classify I think I know the answer, but would you classify yourself as like a perfectionist?
Hmm.
I'll follow this up. I've never rarely met someone who worked in branding that wasn't on the side of perfectionist, because branding involves so much like intricacy of thought and like almost like philosophy and psychology and skill. And so when Sean would probably want to write an ad about anchovies, it wouldn't just be like a blue box with like white text being like dream bigger or something. You would take it up a notch. You would take it far more up a notch. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, what your social media marketing would be.
It's so funny that you say that. I think, again, so many things have changed for me over time. I think that I should also say, like, while I kind of view myself in much more of a, much more wisdom nowadays, I also do surround myself by quite a younger team around me. So it's a good balance of wisdom, and then they can break all the rules and I'll pull them back when I need to. But it's funny that you asked that, because I would say like starting off like as a designer, I was really like a perfectionist. And now I certainly have a level of understanding of quality, but I think you'd probably maybe be surprised to kind of like I have a pretty good intuition too of two things that kind of go against perfection. Number one is perfection can sometimes, how do I say this? It has this ability, well, let's actually start off with the easy one. It has this ability to kind of stop you from progress. Um,
For sure. This is something I also struggle with. That's why I'm so this kinda like sometimes when we ask questions, they're almost mirrors of ourselves. I suffer with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, and like that's kind of the thing too. Like, we're again, that's why if you're working on something for your own agency, seeking outside help from another agency, and maybe there's a trade out there, is really advantageous, because we're currently been working on a new website for ourselves for like over a year. That's like totally unreasonable and not necessary. That we be looking at that as a red flag from a client perspective. So, but when it's yours, you kind of have that. And again, going through your own branding, whether it be design or naming or website, gives you tremendous empathy of what the client's going through in a new light. But stalling of progress is number one with perfection. But there's also this other thing where there's this kind of philosophical mantra I have where like some things matter, some things don't, right? Like there's a level of perfection that has less to do with like understanding what the function is. And again, getting wrapped into a personal taste of, do I like a circle or a square better here? So I've been able to let things lie pretty effectively where I understand what its goal is. And if it accomplishes that, yeah, there's maybe 5 million different ways to do that. But I don't really get lost in that, both in the pursuit of forward progress, but the understanding like I'll often say around the agency, like, it doesn't matter. Like, which would be like, there's like, oh my gosh, like that sounds like you don't understand quality. No, I you brought up color earlier. Like, I'm really agnostic to color. Like, only slightly, do I find color to be often inappropriate. I'm certainly not getting into, oh, blue, that means trust. One person's red is roses, one person's red is murder.
Purple is royal. Not anymore, it's not.
Like, color has more to do with like let's look at your competitors. What color is that? Can we have an opportunity to differentiate? And I care less often about the color itself. I do think I'm a little sensitive to contrast, like the hue of like either a bright red or a subdued red. I mean, there's certainly something there. But yeah, being a mature designer is coming from this place of like really understanding kind of what matters and how much armchair kind of stuff you're doing that really like somewhat almost a superficial practice. Again, it's taking yourself as a creative and kind of moving into this realm of being more of a carpenter a little bit. It's a little bit more a blue collar. It's a little bit more kind of, yeah, hammer and nails than an art gallery where we're discussing the implications of, this work and what it means to our society. Not that I don't have a level or ear for that and what brands mean in our culture, but so that helps me prevent being a little bit of a perfectionist. I seem to have grown into a convergence of both the reality of the world and my understanding of that, mixed with still some hopes for what I hope it can be, and somehow I've married those two in a way that makes my life a lot less stressful, I guess you could say, too.
Yeah. What is what holds the future for anchovies or yourself? Like what are you kind of getting excited about? Maybe like what are you worried about? What's the tension there?
I mean, the classic kind of answer right now is the implications to AI to our work. And I think, typically, there's everything from, yes, it's going to eliminate our work, to no, it's only going to eliminate people who don't use AI. That's a very common thing I see within the creative sphere. But one of the reasons that I'm quite interested in, be, I mean, my, there are so many unknowns with it. I don't try to get too wrapped up in what like think is going to happen. I do believe that brands and kind of a better answer to this is they probably are going to look a lot different. I don't mean that just aesthetically. I mean that they're kind of probably going to work a lot different. Whether, like, hypothetically, one scenario that would, explain why there might be more work for brands and not less is we may find brands become very adaptable to people's own tastes and aesthetic preferences, where you could go to a website and somehow, some way, it understands that you like minimalism versus maximalism. Like,
Like a dynamic brand.
yeah, those are the
That's
most
crazy. Right, that's a really interesting thought. Yeah.
that's where a lot of my brain lies, and kind of, which is totally unorthodox to why brands were important in the past, because they need to be recognizable and you needed to remember them and stuff. But perhaps that will maybe won't maybe it has more to do, or has more to do with how it resonates with me than it has to do with my ability to kind of, I don't know, memorize it in a more traditional way. So yeah, it's just going to be very completely, like, different. So I guess, where I live, and in response to this, is quite in an imaginative state. And one thing I would like to mention too about the AI, whether it be Midjourney, Runway, you know Google VO. I think the best important piece that, as agencies kind of do consider philosophically and from a business standpoint of what's going to happen, is live in the brain of a 13-year-old. It's so funny. Agencies and designers and everyone out there have become so not punk about their craft, and get so, gatekeeping, and this isn't, and just all of these opinions that feel much more corporate to me than if you would have given me these tools at 13. I would have had a sense of curiosity and imagination, and I'd want to break things and say that's not how we're going to do things anymore. And funny for a lot of creatives that I think believe themselves to kind of be anti-corporate, and these artists and things are quite the opposite when it comes to that topic. And for me, being more open-minded and being a kid again with these tools, and to be in a place right now where if you have an idea, there is less, in between you and actually like visualizing that, is what an incredible thing, where your imagination has less roadblocks in front of it. But then, well, how is that going to affect my business? It becomes the next thing. And that, again, is not very cool to me. It's true and it's real. And I empathize with everyone in this, like, trying to figure it out. But like, coming from that, like, childlike curiosity is going to, I think, essentially help you position yourself much better of rethinking why we're here, why brands are here, and making it fun again, and not getting so in the weeds with the how it affects your business could be helpful. So I basically, to answer that long wind, I have no idea where we're headed. I have no, both from, we're in a really weird spot now. Like, I think of just kind of continually figuring out who we are as an agency. And I think I'm just kind of riding the wave and not trying to play too much chess right now because of the landscape being so strange for us, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what could happen with AI is in the kind of brand identity space is that like people are just going to start to look the same, and I think that's always been an issue. And we see it
Mm,
with like Cracker Barrel, we see it with like different brands where we're just like we just all look the same. And I think what I've seen from like your work, especially like the law firms, is like you're all about like breaking that, and like I respect that so much. I think you know
thank you.
if yeah, I think that's how a lot of agencies kind of should look at things where it's like, let's I mean, it comes with more work, like, you have to convince someone to break their crystal vase, like, I'm sure
Well
it
said.
you know, it's hard, but, yeah, I would love to, like, sit in on one of your client meetings and just, like, learn how, like, you sell your kind of, like, vase crystal breaking, because I know, like, I've in my own experience had trouble with that. But as we kind of like wrap up the podcast, is there anything that like you want to clarify or any kind of like closing words or, maybe I would love to hear who you think is like crushing their brand. Like who do you think is like maybe you mentioned like you like 100 Monkeys agency, but like what's a brand that you're just like, oh fuck, like that's what I aim for.
I mean, certainly if we're just speaking locally here, Mast is someone that we admire greatly and watch carefully. But I think even more reasons why things like this are actually important to us. I'd love to collab on something where we've discussed internally about like, I think we kind of view ourselves so competitively that it doesn't really bring us together often. And, just having like kind of like a once a quarter like dinner to kind of bring some of the agencies together. Like, honestly,
Meeting of the five families.
yeah, yeah, and it can even just be something to get to know each other as like people, not necessarily try to kind of necessarily, did talk about, design or business. But Mas is certainly someone on my radar. It's funny, designers, incredibly talented. His name's Logan, is on our team, and he's like really always in the weeds of like knowing many, many different agencies and has a lot of fan favorites. I will say, unfortunately for me, while it comes through, I am also very sensitive to seeing great work in a way where I'm experiencing it, but it also like can put you in the space of like, I suck.
Oh, yeah. We that's to be human, I think, a little bit.
So I would say I create like, especially at this level of my career where I'm kind of at, like I have somewhat of a healthy kind of like acknowledgement and experience with different agencies, but also enough distance where, it's not, I'm kind of recognizing more broadly what I see happening in design that's less acutely kind of focused on one agency. But yeah, so that's definitely, an agency, that I think has always just done such a fantastic job. Well, I think agencies that I personally find to be the
What's
most
a
interest. Yeah.
what's a brand that you really like?
I mean, one that comes up so much, it's probably like just, over kind of discussed at this point, but Liquid Death.
Yeah.
You mentioned something just a moment ago that, and how we sell as an agency, which is like 80% of like, a lot of like, I think of how you get to be great, of not only getting your idea through. Like, let me just give you like one little, like, I think fun little story of like, we're very case study centric and like certainly appreciate a lot of what kind of principles came about in the 1960s. And there was this time like in the 80s, this is like very lore, but like where they were transitioning out of like a drink in the morning and a drink at lunch and a drink in the meeting and stuff. And it goes to be said that an agency once kind of brought everyone together and said, okay, well, we're going to like stop doing that. And specifically no more, cocktails and whiskey within pitch meetings. And some guy raised his hand and he's like, well, how is anyone going to buy our ideas then? And that the story always stuck with me for 2 reasons. One, it articulates how much selling is involved. But funny enough, even within that, when I'm asked a client, we love to pitch on Fridays to kind of let them allow the weekend. And typically, even in our pitch, I only do minimal Q&A. I really want them to absorb it. And there's even a great case study about the Chase Bank logo that I won't get into now that talks about, how things can, grow over time of someone's understanding or their appreciation for the work. But I even actually encourage, if a client does drink, to evaluate the work over the weekend with a cocktail. It allows them to be in a certain headspace that is more open-minded and conducive for that.
Hmm.
I can't remember exactly what the question was other than
No, no,
that.
no, no, no. Let's
Liquid death, liquid death.
hold up. I want to stay with this. I think
Okay,
this is like
okay,
a
sure,
really
sure, yeah.
interesting, like maybe that is the issue with like pitching clients where like they're so caught up in their like ego, in not necessarily like their ego, but just like who they are, who they think they are. And like maybe the alcohol, maybe there requires like a pre pitch like separation of who you think you are. Like, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Fear is what we're discussing
yeah,
here.
fear.
And the alcohol has that ability to kind of like soften that. And when you go through the journey, like, and this is why I came at a place where I'm confident, I'm decisive as a creative director, but I do have room for empathy because a client, when we had the Garza, it was so bold, and I don't know if he truly like saw it as himself, as a manifestation of himself, but like there's such fear that like if someone presents a brand and a logo, will people take them seriously? Will people make fun of it? And all of these natural human things that kind of occur during that time, where that's usually what's in between, at least kind of like these big pushbacks from a client, is their fear of not anything other than the fact how other people will see them. And the bolder of identities you get, if you could imagine, right? Like, let's say, okay, you're going, first day of school, and you just make up, your kid, and you have this bold choice. And you're wearing some tight jeans for the first time because now they're cool and
Dude,
whatever. And like you're
I know that feeling very well.
right. Like, but it's funny because like those are actually what's going to make you kind of stand out. So it's a direct correlation between kind of something greatly differentiated to the
Yeah,
risk of someone feeling very fearful.
that's such a cool, crazy like analogy. Is it an analogy? It's not a metaphor, but just like
Yeah, it's
because
the
it's
human condition,
the brand is like
like,
just our exterior. It's like wearing a
mhm.
new hat or like wearing like white pants. White pants is a hard one, like especially in Colorado where people don't really focus on style, I think a little bit. But
And exactly. But see, and then what happens is you wear like those white pants, and this is why sometimes I have a way of actually telling my clients often to share that. It's just depending on, it's the way they share it, not if they should share it. And you go out, and then now you're at the bar and everyone's like, love your pants, love it, love it. And all of
you
a sudden
stand
now
out. You're
you're
more,
like,
you
damn.
have more depth. Yeah, and you're like, shit.
So the question is, how do you get them through that? And then, yeah, funny enough, beyond a myriad of things, focusing on allowing, potentially giving them a moment of something that changes how their brain is working to kind of better find a comfort zone that allows them to see the work more clearly, is strangely enough, like still something that works even since the 1960s.
Dude, fascinating. I don't think on this podcast I've ever gone as deep into like these like psychological, and I love this stuff. This is
Oh,
what I'm
cool.
all about. Well, thanks so much, Sean. This has been like one, if not my favorite podcast that we've done. This is like such an interesting deep dive into the brands, the branding side, the philosophy side, the psychological side, and keep on doing the great work that you do.
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
You got it.